People who married your partner despite having an unsatisfactory sex life. How are you doing? Me and my wife had differing drives. We lasted 7 years. The lack of sex wasn't a deal breaker. The lack of any intimacy, including hugs or kisses, was. Commenter. Alternatively, married 7 years this week, but happily. We used to go at it when we were younger and new, like everyone. It started getting less intimate and I was frustrated. I thought young guys always wanted it. I even said, this is what I need. And if you can't give it to me, I'll need to make a decision. He said, you can get it somewhere else if you need to. I knew something wasn't right when he said that. After some coaxing and a couple trips to the doctor, he was extremely low T. It's been about 1.5 years since starting TRT, and we have sex every day and have been for over a year. Story 2. Don't know if you'll see this op, but my wife and I had a poor sex life for the first 8 years. We dated before marriage and over a decade after we got married. She was abused as a child, which led to complications of intimacy. I was never satisfied and learned to hide my sexual desire from her so as not to trigger her. It was incredibly lonely and difficult, but we kept at it. And now, after all these years, the sex I dreamed we'd have as teenagers, we're having in late middle age now that we have a 9-year-old son. There were times when it could have fallen apart, but we kept at it and kept working on ourselves. Our values are really similar, and she lets me be myself as I do with her. I see a lot of doom ITT, and I felt that doom in my marriage at times, but I also felt her fierce love of me and mine of her. I always saw what our sex could be, and that promise was not false, just a different experience than many have had. Story 3. I loved her more than I disliked the lack of sex. I ended up getting a vasectomy, and once she was able to stop her birth control, it was like a flip of the switch. Both men and women are completely unaware of how birth control utterly destroys a woman's libido. We went from once a month or two to every other day. Story 4. I love my wife so much. The sex is not the best, but who she is absolutely amazing. It makes up for the lack of good sex. She is the most loyal friend I could have, and she's also an amazing mother. Sex isn't everything, and she tries which more than I could ask. Story 5. I've had a bad relationship with a ducking phenomenal sex life. Out of this world, mind-bogglingly good. I'm currently in the best relationship of my life with a person who makes my life easier than anyone ever has. But the sex life is average at best. I prefer the latter. Commenter, that's awesome that the latter is working for you. I have had both. I prefer neither. Each one caused different types of anxiety for me. Now I'm single and happier and living without anxiety. I'm older and getting more okay with the idea of just being single forever rather than settling in anyway with someone who isn't right for me in all the ways. Story 6. I also really want to get this off my chest, as I am getting some questions. Contrary to what everyone here is assuming, I am the woman. I was abused as a child and had super low drive. I was clinically depressed since I was in high school. I then met my ex, who I dated for 4 years, who happened to be my best friend for 7 years before that. Cheated on me twice. Sex with him was good, but he was manipulative and almost drove me to end my life. From the first time he cheated on me, he kept floating the idea that I need to cheat to get back at him, and then we will be even. Even though I found it disgusting and never considered it then, eventually after we broke up, I started playing this scenario in my head and started watching erotic movies of that genre. After I started dating my current partner, I've never felt so happy, content, and at ease with anyone all my life. He just gets me. We could be locked in an empty room with nothing and would still make each other laugh and engaged. And the sex part of it sometimes feels very insignificant to me, but sometimes feels like everything. I would say my sex drive is now higher. I should also add that even when I was single before my ex, and after, I never got into any kind of physical relationships until my current partner because I have these strong physical urges, but they go away after sex. I also want to add that my partner is aware of my feelings and tries to do his best most of the times and super in touch with my feelings. I wrote this question to understand how a future would look like, best case or worst case scenario. When I said I am freaking out, I don't mean to be settling down with him. I just mean the jitters. Culturally, marriage is a huge thing, and you are expected to spend the rest of your life with this person. So, in my head, I will go from being an Peter Pan adult to an actual married adult making big life choices and decisions. As I said, I probably need to find a way to pay for a good therapist and sort my brain out, as all of this could also be stemming out from unresolved trauma. I didn't go to a therapist in a decade probably. I will also check out dead bedrooms. Until then, thanks for all of your responses. I'm happy that everyone is choosing their battles and getting through life. Sorry for any grammatical errors or sentences that don't make sense. I should have gone to bed 7 hours ago. Shouldn't have started this question before bedtime. Commenter. Please be aware that my experience is not the norm, but I wanted to add a good story for you. My husband is asexual. I am really really not. We've been together for over 20 years now, and for most of that time, we didn't even know asexuality was a thing. Over the years, there's been fights and arguments over our differing libidos. My self-confidence hit rock bottom and then drilled through the rock. The few times we did have sex, it was clear he wasn't into it, and he didn't make much effort. I forced a conversation because I needed answers, and he finally admitted to both himself and me that he's ace and sex repulsed. He cried, I cried, we talked. He said if I wanted to leave, if I wanted to sleep with other people, he would understand. It would hurt, but he would understand. When I weighed up my options and really deeply thought about, I chose him instead of sex. I can make myself good better than he ever did, and there's still a lot of physical intimacy of the non-sexual kind. Oddly enough, now that it's out in the open, our relationship has improved tenfold. We can joke about it. I have not once regretted my choice. Story 7. I'm doing great now. Haven't really had sex in a few years, but I don't care. I love her and I love our life together and I love being near her. My wife and I sleep in different beds, and we've never been closer. Do I want to have more sex than I do have? Yeah, sure, although not as badly as I used to. It used to be a permanent ache, but now it's kind of on the level of, I really want to get that water tank installed nagging project. Do I want to have more sex at the expense of having less access to her in my daily life? No, no way. There are heaps of things in my life and in my marriage that are not the way I'd want them to be. If I could do the choosing, neither of us would have these health problems, including the mental health problems. We'd be richer, but not in the bad way. Our fathers would still be alive. Our kids wouldn't have the health issues they have. Our house wouldn't be falling down. I wouldn't be this fat. I want more sex than I'm getting, but I also want more travel. I want a better car. I want the guitar I really deserve. Those are all things I want. What do I need? Deep down, what are the parts of my life I will not tolerate the absence of? My kids are supported. They're safe and thriving under my roof. They know their parents love each other and each of them. We're all together. I need to sit on my back deck every single night, smoking and reading with my wife on our tiny little 2-seater couch, wrapped up under the same blanket, listening to the birds and watching the sky go past. I need to care for our mothers in whatever way I can. I need stability and routine. I need to be with someone who both puts up with my bullcrap and doesn't put up with it. I need to be with someone who knows how to show me the compassionate way to live. I need trust. It's completely fundamental to my sense of self, that I be able to implicitly trust the words and actions of my partner, and that I be extended the trust that I deserve, regardless of whether or not they like me right now. Compared to any of that, let alone all of it, what the hell do I need to have sex for? Why would I give any of this up just to tick that box, at the risk of unticking every other box that means everything to me? It's just sex. I'd like to go water skiing again too. I wouldn't mind going skydiving or bungee jumping. Am I going to leave my wife if I don't get them? There's a difference between lack of sex and lack of intimacy. Sex is meaningless. Intimacy is vital. Story 8, much better. We got older, matured, trusted each other more, which made me enjoy sex more, and in turn initiated it more. Brought toys in which helped and now rarely have to use them anymore. We also have a common dream of where we see ourselves, which is together with a house full of family at the holidays. So we make sure to keep working towards that. And sex is a huge part of the equation. We made it into us being a team against any problem instead of each other. Story 9, been together 20 years, married 15. Sex was frequent and fun before marriage. After we got married, it was like a switch flipped. The only time she had desire and sought it out was in the baby-making years. These days, it's erratic at best. I may get a week where we have sex 3 times, then I may go on a 3-month drought. Always me initiating, never her. I love her to death and she's the only one I want. But if I don't feel like she doesn't find me attractive anymore. Story 10? Oof, rocky. My self-esteem is in the crapter from constantly initiating and being turned down. I've also come to realize that a lack of concern for my pleasure in the bedroom translates to a lack of concern for me, I guess. Within other arenas of our family life with little desire to change behavior there either. Story 11. Just had our standard 3-monthly blow-up after the, hey, would it be okay if you just made a bit more effort in the intimacy department request? She's apologized this morning, promised she's working on it, thanked me for my patience and understanding, and that I'll see change soon. We'll be having the same chat again in 3 months when nothing has changed. It's been 7 tough years. I'm tired. Story 12. I'm the woman in the situation, so I guess I've got a different perspective here. Our relationship is amazing. Since we moved in together 6 years ago, we have spent less than 10 days, full 24 HRs, without seeing each other at least once. We're one of the few couples that thrived during COVID because we genuinely enjoy each other's company. That being said, we had a rocky experience with sexual chemistry from the outset. He had never experienced this with prior partners, and neither have I. But everything else about who we are and how we mesh together is something I can only wish for other people and never thought I would ever have. We rarely argue, we have intimacy and tenderness toward each other, and we never go a day without saying, I love you. Do I wish I wanted to rip his clothes off? For sure, yes. But we have 2 beautiful kids. a home full of warmth, and I can't imagine loving someone more. I wouldn't give him up for anything, not even mind-blowing sex. Story 13. We got divorced. Initiating it was the best decision I've made in my life. I've learned a bit about sex and intimacy following the relationship that I'll share. In the way our society is structured, one of the most acceptable forms of intimacy for men is sex. Emotional intimacy in male friendships, families, and in their relationships is low, and so one of the primary ways men meet their human need for closeness and intimacy is through sex. I believe this is seen in the many young men who are lonely and disconnected, and getting a relationship and having sex become a primary goal to meet this need. Having friends might be important, but having a girlfriend seems to be more important. That's how it was for me and in how I perceive what it's like for many other young men. Sex as a form of intimacy is great. The issue only arises when it becomes the only or dominant way to meet needs for intimacy. How I unconsciously viewed sex was as the vital way in which I could receive closeness. In my case, I decided that some sex was better than no sex. And so my decision-making was based on getting my needs somewhat met instead of not at all met. My ex also suffered from a compromised ability for connection. It's not only men who have this, of course. Hers were for different reasons. And part of her history made sex complicated as well. She had considerable fear of intimacy. She could barely even look into my eyes for any length of time. That hurts remembering now, more than the lack of our sex. It was the inability on both of our parts to be more intimate within and outside of sex that really made the relationship and sex life unsatisfactory for both of us. I suppose my point in all this is that maybe there is more to the story than just sexual drives, compatibility. Sometimes, maybe often, but I'm not sure. The sexual relationship is the canary in the coal mine for relationship intimacy. Just my 2 cents. Story 14. Been with my wife for 15 years now, married for 13. We met in college, and even from the start, our sex drives differed pretty drastically. My high versus her low. I initiate 9 times out of 10, and over the years I've made many suggestions in an effort to spice up the bedroom, but nothing seems to stick. I love going down on her and giving her pleasure and will almost always try to make sure she gets off before I do. But after that, sex for her is just going through the motions and there's never really any passion there. We have a beautiful, almost 2-year-old, and my wife is an amazing mother, but we're deep in the roommate phase. If you know, you know. And knowing our sexual history up to before our child was born, I don't see it improving anytime soon, if ever. I often feel very lonely and have tried to talk to her about it, but sometimes I just feel lost. I love our family and would do anything for her and our child, but the lack of feeling physically desired is taxing on my emotional and mental health. Story 15. My sex drive as a young man was high. I had been a pretty escorty teen with a pretty reckless social life, so I viewed it as normal to expect to have sex many times per week. My wife was abused many years ago. Sex has never been something she's liked. It was bearable for the first couple years, then it was the cause of a lot of fights. 1 month after about 10 years, I decided I'd stop trying to be intimate at all. No hugs or kisses, nothing. After the start of the 2nd month, it was driving me insane. It's all I could think about. I finally brought it up to her, and she had no idea I was trying to make a point. I realized then, after 10 years and 2 kids, how seriously she didn't need or desire intimacy. That was a days-long argument, discussion. I was able to explain how important to me intimacy was, and I came to understand how we were polar opposites in that way. She made an effort to accommodate me, even seemed to enjoy sex more. Though to this day I couldn't tell you if that's for my benefit or not. I learned to be satisfied with less sex than I previously assumed was normal and tried things to make it more enjoyable for her. Didn't really work. About 3 years after that, I started a new medication, Vivance, that made me really physically sensitive. I had with very little effort. I took it for about a year, and when I stopped the droog, my libido shot through the roof. We had sex every day for a month or 2. Slowly, that moved to once a month or so. About 2 years ago, my libido began to crash hard. I thought I was losing testosterone, but tests said I was normal. We went to sex every couple months, to 3, 4 months now since we've had sex. I'm still doing myself good, but it's more for the physical release than the desire for intimacy. This means we're now, after 22 years, apparently in the same spot. We don't talk about sex much. We don't really want to have sex. I still think about it, but not in the way I did before, mostly with regard to how it impacts society and how much I've changed in such a short time. I'm pretty sure she never thinks about it. All that being said, I never loved her less. I never felt like leaving or cheating. I never thought about forcing her, and trying to understand her feelings about it has always been very important to me. I've learned that sex isn't what makes a good marriage. Trust, comfort, hope, and being able to truly be yourself are the things that matter. Hope that helps a bit. Story 16. I've got a very high sex drive, and she's got a very low sex drive. It's been very challenging. We consistently work on it, but it doesn't seem to get much better. This is the biggest reason I actually got this Reddit, so I can explore, discuss my sexuality with others since I have no outlet for it. Story 17. Not married. but I am going through this experience and it feels a bit theotic to share with people in the same boat. My previous relationships, one in particular, the one before my current one, although I didn't realize it at the time, were abusive. My ex didn't understand that sex had become painful. He convinced me that the pain was all in my head, so I just let him get one with it, because if I didn't, it would turn into an explosive argument which I wouldn't win, so it was easier to just let him. I was diagnosed with vaginismus as a result. Turns out the initial reason for being in pain was endometriosis, which I only found out recently. When me and my current partner got together, he didn't show much interest in sex, and I couldn't get my head around it. I thought I must not be attractive to him. I couldn't understand why we were in a relationship. Once after we'd done the deed, he admitted that we'd had sex because he thought I wanted to. It absolutely broke me, thinking I'd put him in the same position my ex put me in. I told him from then on, we only have sex only if we both want to. Cue sex almost never happening. I figured out that I use sex as validation, and I needed other ways to find that. I explained to my partner that when I was experiencing what he's going through, lack of sex drive, feeling one-sided, I completely withdrew. I couldn't tolerate kissing, hugging, holding hands. I told him that can't happen to us, and let him know those things are needed and to trust me that I won't be disappointed or try to take it further. I won't lie. Sometimes I am disappointed, but I still feel loved and wanted as long as these things keep coming. The communication and understanding we have for each other trumps a healthy sex life. I can't replace what we have outside of sex. We did see a sex therapist and things massively improved, but life circumstances meant we had to stop the sessions. I know we can reach that point again, but we both respect that we have work to do on ourselves as individuals. Right now, that's our priority. I would never dream of leaving him behind in pursuit for sex because who he is so much more than that. Story 18. Sex was great for years. We had kids. She's a wonderful mother and partner in every aspect. We just don't have any sex anymore. Every time I bring up the topic, I'm shut down, so what am I left with? I dive into the gym. Now I'm at a point in my life where mentally I'm driven, I'm super fit, and have visible abs for the first time in my life, and starting to get approached often. Saying no gets more difficult every day. I'm not breaking up an otherwise healthy and happy family simply because I'm not getting a specific need met. Counseling and therapy doesn't work at all. Open relationships fail 9/10 times. So what am I left with? I'll probably get downvoted for saying, but having a discreet outside arrangement seems like the better option more and more every day. A lot of risk involved in getting potential candidates is extremely risky due to various factors. But, Duckman, go ahead and downvote me now. Most people, men and women I talk to professionally, think psychology, that are in similar situations arrive at and often execute the same conclusion I've reached and feel no guilt over it. You can call these people narcissists, wanting their cake and eating it too, or whatever the current buzzword is, until you see how much they love and support their family. Definitely not people you would throw any of your typical he, she, cheated words at. I don't know why humanity thinks monogamy works for us. What's sad is no one wants to have any kind of honest conversations over it. The only time I ever see this being discussed openly is when they are being judged in a binary manner. Either the people I see talking about it are full of crap, or they have a hormone count close zero. Nobody with a healthy amount of testosterone or estrogen is going to say honestly they are ecstatic to forego any kind of sexual gratification because of how great they cook and take care of the family, or how great of a father, yada yada yada, being an excellent partner and spouse only staves off those internal struggles longer, or strengthens your resolve a bit more. Story 19. I've had a lot of good sex in with a bunch of women. A lot of them sucked in other departments though, but they were hot, great in bed. I've gotten past that point in my life. I'm cool with being with someone who is a good partner, and the sex is just a small part of that. At this point, there are more important things involved for someone I'm going to actually marry and spend the rest of my life with. Obviously, sex has to be there, but it doesn't have to be the best. I'd rather be with someone who is smart, works hard, and puts in effort, caring, sweet, not arrogant or domineering, but feminine, someone who makes a good team, etc. Those things are what keep marriages together. Story 20, coming up on a year now, since the last time. I'm not happy about it, but I get it. We've had a lot of stress in our lives these last few years due to losing many family, most rather quickly and unexpectedly. Also struggles with our 8-year-old, our industry getting hit hard with layoffs, hooray for the recent rate cuts, currently dealing with her father, who is not doing well at all. I've gained some weight. We're both on the north side of 40 now. I can't expect her to want sex through all of this. My worry is as we get older, and so does our families, there's always going to be something going on that will kill the drive. I feel like she'll always have reasons not to, but never find a reason to do it. It wouldn't be so bad if my love language wasn't physical touch, and hers isn't. I can't remember the last time I got a random kiss on the cheek, hug from behind, and I love you out of nowhere. The last time I was going to talk to her, that morning I found out my sister's husband died completely unexpectedly. I had seen him 2 days earlier, and he was fine. That same day, we found out about her dad's health issues. So yeah, completely unsatisfied on the physical side, but there's a lot going on. Don't know if it will ever get better. Story 21. Tried for 7 years, but he not only doesn't want sex, he also doesn't show other forms of intimacy or words of affirmation. I really tried. We're basically roommates with extra steps though, so we're getting a divorce. Story 22. I left him. Hardest thing I ever did. Best friend. Amazing person. I thought we were special. I thought we'd weather it. I thought we could still do other things that would be enough. I thought love was enough. Is not. I waited many years trying to make it work. I was lying to myself. It was soul-crushing. I cried every day for about 3 years near the end. The resentment became unbearable. I finally realized I was staying in a prison I made. It's not like I was chained up in the basement. None of it was his fault. He just had lower libido. It's who he was as a person. He didn't deserve my resentment. It was my choice to live in misery or make a new life for myself. I chose me. If I had a time machine, I'd never have gotten married. The sub-our dead bedroom saved me. I'm the happiest I've ever been now. Story 23. I think you should have at least 2 good years to remember. If it's bad for the beginning and nothing changes, why do people get married in the first place? If you at one point had good sex, you just have to keep working on it. Relationships are about work and loving communication. And if someone isn't willing to talk about it at all, you have to make a decision. But don't cheat. Story 24. When I was young, I worked at CarMax in Florida and a hospital as a nurse tech. Met an old, fat, bald, glasses wearing 50-year-old white guy working at CarMax. Same position as 19-year-old me, same money as me. He had a son my age at Ohio State. His wife happened to work at the same hospital, sterilizing surgical equipment. One day he told me how he would go to all the Filipino massage parlors for sex and the etiquette required to not spook them when first going to these places. I finally asked if he felt bad about his wife and everything. He tells me what? No, not at all. She makes more than I do and she gives me the money to go there. It kept their marriage happy and I thought to myself, yeah, actually I would pay money for you to have sex with other people too. Story 25. Wife has not touched me in 18 years, except for the 3 times having sex. It took to have a second child when she said she wanted to try having a sex life again, then stopped immediately after getting the positive test. She says wanting sex after becoming a parent is perverted and disgusting. As a foreign national, I would lose all custody in a divorce. Dual custody is not a thing, and the remaining sole parent does not have to give access or even remain in contact with the previous parent. However, recently there is political discussion around allowing it in certain circumstances. Therefore, to be able to be around my children, I cannot leave. So I have a mistress. Before meeting them and rebuilding some sort of emotional connection in my life, I was bad, but could not do it because I know it raises the chances of children doing so later in life, so to ensure they have long lives, I have to remain here despite the deep emotional misery. Story 26. Divorced after 8 years. It's always 7, 9 years for this type of marriage. That's how long it takes for the dust to settle and for you to realize that all that work you were putting in to meet in the middle, well, it doesn't end with you both living happily in the middle. You are always putting in work and it's always too much or not enough. It never gets easier, only harder as you are continually not on the same page. You see your peers in lockstep with their spouses and start to realize that you're playing on hard mode while they are on easy mode. And eventually, even that doesn't really explain it anymore. You realize that you're just faking it, and they are not. All of this breeds contempt, resentment, which is what leads to divorce. Story 27. I hate kissing my husband. It's not necessarily his fault. I just have smaller lips, and he has bigger ones, and his tend to be wet kisses. I have never said a word, and I kiss him every chance I get. He is an amazing man and radiates kindness and happiness. I would never want to crush his spirit or pride by telling him I don't like kissing him. Marriage is bending when 90% absolutely fits and 10% is compromise. I don't ever want him to feel less confident when we are being intimate by having the thoughts I'm not enjoying as kisses. That's my secret to a happy marriage I'm thankful for every day. Story 28. My wife and I are high school sweethearts. That being said, I often joke that the 14 years we have been together, we only knew how to have good sex for the last 3 of them, and it has only been getting better. We both have kinks that we were too scared to tell the other one. Guess what? This is it. Crap or get off the pot. We started pushing boundaries and experimenting and, well, wow. If you are in it for the long haul, short haul, don't know, communicate. One glaring example that I would have never dared try a few years ago was dirty talk. Turns out, telling my wife she's a good girl immediately gets her going. The first decade we were together, we really struggles in the sex department. Looking back, even our good sex was mediocre at best. Bottom line, communicate. Chances are, whatever you are scared about asking for has crossed their mind too. To the men out there, most women are freakier than you think. To the women out there, most men are only as freaky as you let them be. Story 29. The background is I spent my early 20s celibate because I was planning on becoming a monk, and because of childhood experiences. One of my foundational beliefs about myself is that I am fundamentally unlovable and undesirable. We had sex before we lived together. When we moved in together, it stopped. She would not initiate, and when I tried to, she would say no, so I stopped initiating. That continued after we got married. If I had healthier self-esteem in front, know if I would have said something to her sooner or just left. But because I believed that I was so undesirable, I didn't even think about that. After several years of marriage, she asked why I never tried to initiate. I told her it's because and always says no, and it makes me feel awful. So we had started working on this with varying levels of success. Turns out she also had some kind of pathological sex avoidance things going on. We are going to be married 10 years in May, and sex life is now best. It has been since we first got together in our mid-20s. Story 30? After 8 years, we divorced. I didn't realize intimacy is so important to me, but I'm happy now. Found someone who has it all. Humor, matching personally, great job, and hot-ass sex. Everything happens for a reason, right? Story 31? I'm a sexual on the spectrum. My wife is not. I don't need sex, but do enjoy it occasionally. It can be a struggle, but we love each other a lot and have a ton of intimacy in other ways. She needs that type of physical intimacy, and I don't. We compromise. I try and be in the mood and in the space, and she tries to inject other types of intimacy as well. We are a team. Story 32. Not great. I avoid his touch because it always leads to sex, and I don't have the confidence to tell him no. Once it's begun, so end up faking my enjoyment and sort of losing myself in my own head. End up feeling terrible afterwards. Rinse and repeat. It's a me issue, not him. Life is stressful. A kid, mental illness, unemployment, and it's just not improved for a long time. Out of the bedroom, we are fine. We joke and talk about all other issues, but not the sex. He will feel rejected, will sulk around without realizing. I'll walk on eggshells and then give in just so he chills out for a few days. Rinse and repeat. Yes, I know we need to communicate more, but he doesn't see an issue other than me being touch-averse. This has gone on too long for me to suddenly announce what's been going on in my head for a very long time without hurting him. It's not worth the stress or damage to our marriage. Story 33. Still married after a long time, but question my choices at times. Started off with a noticeable difference in sex drive interest, but was within a reasonable margin of error. The biggest red flags were her lack of interest in anything beyond vanilla, and that after an X period of time. I was urged to finish. At that point, it almost seemed like a chore for her. Things do not get better. As the years have gone by, the divergence in sex drive has grown. There are reasons I have not pulled the tip cord. Are they good reasons? Maybe, maybe not. Do I question my choices? You bet. Have I made the correct choices? I have no idea. Looking back at the whole history, I don't know if things turned out better or worse by the choices I made. Hindsight being 20/20ths, if I had it to do over. There are several instances where deciding enough was enough would clearly have been the best choice. Story 34. We aren't together after a decade married, but ill summarize it with lyrics from an Usher song. We ain't good, but we still good. We co-parent well. I've always had a higher sex drive, so I understood that expecting 4x a week is difficult, and by the end I was just hoping for once a week or two. This coupled with the lack of physical touch. Stay on the opposite side of the couch, you're so needy. Hugs. For what? What's wrong with you? Kisses. I gave you your one for the day already? I wish I was joking. Made me reevaluate if I was asking for too much, and I questioned if I wanted to do this for the rest of my life. I didn't. My current partner and I have been together for 18 months. We have similar love languages for how we give and receive, and I have never been happier. Story 35. We met, 27F and 32M. Sex was fantastic and our connection was amazing. Got engaged 1 year later. The sex started to drop off. We worked at it, but ultimately got stuck. She only wanted it every Saturday morning, which ruined the fun of it. Ended up getting married at 2 years. I'm 6 months married, having major sexual problems. I've started noticing other women. I've spoken to a friend about my bedroom issues. Wife has checked my phone, and now I feel like this whole connection is diminishing. Haven't had sex in a month. Seeing a couples therapist. My life is ducked, but not the way I wanted. Story 36. We were married for 20 years. He was my first partner, so I had no experience with what I want. I never enjoyed our sex life. Nothing particular. It just never felt like that amazing thing everyone was enthusiastic about. I always thought I was frigid, and the problem was me. Made my peace with that sex just wasn't important for me in life, and learned to dissociate so he would still get what he needed. I don't think it was satisfactory for him either, though, because there was zero desire from my side. After we separated, not for this reason, I met another man. Our chemistry was amazing, and so was our intimacy. Suddenly, I understood what all the world's fuss about sex is about. Turns out that, from today's perspective, sex is important for me, and with the right partner and chemistry, all changes. Story 37. 5 years into my marriage, 2 kids, 15 years together. For the first few years of our marriage, I was convinced I made a big mistake. She is an incredible wife, mother, and person. But the sex was always uneventful, lazy, and never initiated by her. I decided I loved her too much to let my feelings towards our sex life ruin our marriage. Turns out constant open communication works wonders. Bought some toys and books to experiment with. Made a real effort to help open her up to new ideas. Not too pushy, but baby steps along the way. Make sure she finishes first to keep every experience positive. She has also responded well and really puts in the effort, and we're making progress. Still not exactly ideal from my perspective, but hopefully the progress continues. Story 38. Woman here. Been together for 12 years since we were 18. The beginning was on fire. I'm talking multiple times per day every day. Then little things trickled in throughout the years. If I ever said no, he'd pout or get upset, would stop cuddling or touching me because he would get too horny. Constantly tell me I should just do it since he wanted it, and I should want to make him happy. If I said no, it was never respected. He will continue to ask all day. A lot of that language and IDK, all that pressure really kills your drive. You start thinking, I said no 3 days ago, I can't say no anymore. We are best friends, and everything else is amazing. We just had a baby, but I constantly wish I could have my sex drive back. Story 39. Ignored it, told myself it would get better. After 15 years and 2 kids, surprised she's gay. Makes sense, but sucks. Sex life never gets better once married. Learn from the other millions of people in dead bedroom relationships. Story 40? Turned out the many baroque, really grotesque lies told by ex to avoid intimacy were actually to cover the fact that he was a gay man who needed a hot wife beard for his career. That he refused to clue in for some reason. Seriously, I made a commitment. We could have worked something out if he'd wanted the optics. Instead, he went full mask off, and I realized his sexuality was the smallest, least important secret facet he had. The end of our relationship was terrifying and dangerous. I left him 3.5 years ago and am using my settlement to become a PA and have never been happier. So, you take the good, you take the bad, I guess, in my case. Story 41. Not doing great at all. Married 5 years in November. My father died 3 years ago, and I've been in and out of depression. I feel like my wife is just no longer attracted to me after seeing me at my weakest. And the romance/intimacy is now gone. Have spoken about it, but she just tells me she doesn't know what's wrong with here. But she's just not keen. She doesn't enjoy it. She doesn't need it. She doesn't think about it. Huge problem in my life as I think about sex every single day, but just hold in all my frustrations and disappointment, starting to turn into resentment that is coming out in other areas of our relationship. Story 42. Everyone is different. Some people have more sexual needs than others. My wife and I have been happily married for 15 years now, and we rarely have sex. My wife naturally has a low drive, and the medication I take has a similar effects. During the first few years of our marriage, we both thought we were weird or something was wrong. But despite the absence of sex, we love each other so much. A love that goes way beyond sex. At this point in our lives, we have accepted that sex isn't the most important thing in our relationship. For some, it's very important, and a poor sex life can lead to divorce. But for others, it's not important. Story 43. It's so difficult to leave a loving, supportive husband because he didn't desire me. But not as hard to spend each day being undesired and to know no matter what I do, I can't change that. Together 6 years and married for 3. We still love and admire each other. But our ability to act on this realization was a sign that we're both still growing and evolving and learning about ourselves. It hurts, but I still think it's a good thing. It tears away at your self-worth and self-image when the person you love and trust the most, for whatever reason, can't match your physical needs. Story 44. Honestly, pretty good. 6 years in, I have a higher sex drive than my husband, but I realized with the time that lots of that drive came from a desire to feel validated. I was really hypersexualized when we met and based a good chunk of my worth on my ability to sexually please men. Being with my husband has helped me to move past that point. Sex is still important for me, but much less than it used to be. I wish it was a bit more frequent, but overall I'm happy with the sex that we do have. Story 45. Been married a little over a year and have had sex once this year. It's difficult. But I have a spouse on a different work schedule, high-speed internet, purchase tissues in bulk. Oh, sure, my hand might cramp up from time to time, but that's the price I pay. The reality is, my spouse's family wasn't open about sex or sexual lifestyles. As a result, conversations with my spouse about sexual anything are one-sided. They shut down or get embarrassed and change topics. I've given up. The partnership works well, the sex does not. I've learned to adapt. Call it a marriage survival instinct. Story 46. Happily divorced. We lasted 4.5 years before she cheated on me, which is hilarious considering I was the frustrated one, not her. And I offered to do anything she wanted. 8 years of post-divorce life, I've had a better sex life than I ever imagined. I'm so much happier. I highly recommend going after what you want. It's out there, and it's worth the work to find it. I love my life. 42M. Story 47. I'm lucky if it's 12 times a year. Been married over 20 years, but it's been like this the last 5 or so. Even before it was never that frequent in the first place. I wondered at times if she'd been having an affair, but that's not it. It's frustrating getting turned down all the time because it's a blow to the self-confidence. But I'm not a selfish asshole to ever go outside the marriage and cause that kind of irreparable harm and damage to her and to our kids for a piece of ass. I just live with it. Story 48. 17 years, my wife never had the same sex drive. It was incredibly lonely at times, but I was in for it. She didn't like sex of any kind. Said she never enjoyed it. Even kissing wasn't a thing with her. No problem. I was committed. We had a great family. After 17 years, I learned she actually did enjoy it. Improved her oral skills and more kissing. It just wasn't with me. She had spent the last 5+ years having affairs with at least 4 men. So anyway, I'm better now that that's over. Story 49. Was there with my ex-wife. I thought I was so in love with her. I was. She had been abused growing up, so I was so patient with her. We did not consummate the marriage and had sex twice in 3 years at one point. I stayed loyal. She got bored and left. My new girlfriend is sexually mind-blowing. I've never experienced such contentment in that area. We fit. Told her it is not worth staying in a sexless marriage. Story 50. Married just over 16 years, I always knew what I wanted in a woman. Loyal, good cook, good mother to my kids, enjoys experiences, and was willing to put sex at the bottom of the list to prioritize the above, to find a long-lasting partner. While our sex life is rare, it is intimate. I think knowing what you want ahead of time will make your choice and sexual frustrations easier down the line. This is a way, not the way. Story 51. Great. My wife and I aren't sexually compatible. We don't have sex and never have. We've been married for 3 years now, have been together for nearly 10. Wouldn't trade it for the world. I saw the other posts about other touches. We do very frequently kiss, hug, hold, and cuddle. Story 52? 5 years. Tried everything to lower my sex drive. Workout, bike, lots of work. We are so incredibly compatible in every way except sexual, and it's becoming impossible to ignore. I have never cheated, but I'm starting to justify having a paid affair just for the sex and intimacy. It's wild, and it's making me think that it's simply time to move on. But then it's so painful because everything else matches so well. Story 53. I was told women reach their sexual peak in their 40s, so I figured it would get more fun as time went on. That's a lie. Either your sex drives are compatible or you're not. Don't marry expecting people to change in anyway. Plan accordingly because it could get even worse and often does for some. Story 54. I'm fine. I love her and the life we have created a ton, and although we are in a sexless marriage, I just tell myself it could be worse and keep loving her and kids, dog, and try and now dwell on it or let bitterness or resentment pop up. Would I prefer more sex? Yes, 1,000,000 times yes, but it is what it is. Story 55. I was just telling this lady on here that she's not a horrible person for wanting to be tied up and ducked right. Others were telling her to go on a run. Why is being sexy and horny such a taboo? Story 56. Together 15 years? Sex really died off after trying for a kid and having to do IVF stuff. Probably been a year with no sex. We are still plenty affectionate, kiss cuddling, etc. So it really doesn't feel like any big loss. Hooked up with a lot of girls when I was younger. Maybe that helps. Getting married in a month. 43 YOMMA. Story 57. Your sexual desire and cognitive desire are meant to be harmonized. Ignoring somatic needs is just as harmful as ignoring psychological needs. A lack of sexual satisfaction's house desire is a signal that is meant to be evaluated, understood, and acted upon. It may not be the end for your relationship, but it should always be addressed. Story 58. My wife was very inexperienced, but she learned how to become better. Honest talking, showing her what you like and to make sure she enjoyed it too really helps. Married 25 years now and still satisfied. Story 59. Coming up on 2 years, I know the date. We have a wonderful, loving relationship, and we raise our 3-year-old son who's thriving. We spend way too much time lying in bed with our phones, and she's always been afraid to initiate. I'm getting the snip soon, and my hope is when she gets her iud removed, that may spark something. Story 60. Very grateful to have a wife that finds me very attractive. She's a great wife willing to always get down. It has slowed down a little to once or twice a week, but it's been me not initiating as much. 18+ movies does ruin a marriage's sex life. I had to deal with that. Story 61. My spouse has an utterly different drive than me and acts as if it matters, but they don't seem to care. I've been with them for over 20 years, and I'd have to blow up our whole family. I guess I gave up at some point. Hopefully, it doesn't screw up our kids that we have a terrible marriage. Story 62. He told me I had a low sex drive, but the truth is, I stopped wanting to sex him because I saw what a disgusting person he was. Totally tanked our sex life, and now I'm free of him. Story 63. Doing okay. I was low drive when we first committed due to the pill, and it was rough for him. Now that we are a bit older, the tables have turned. Currently, I am feral for sex, and he'd rather watch TV than be throated. Story 64. I'm in a low sex marriage, and we are doing well. Neither of us has a high sex drive. We both work, and we have kids and interests, and life is busy when we do have sex. It's absolutely fantastic. Just not frequent, which is fine for us. Story 65. Been married almost 24 years. It's okay. Her drive has never been great. We still have intimacy. She's still the best person I know. She makes me want to be a better man. Sex is great, but love, intimacy, friendship, and family is stronger. Story 66. Not married, but I was in a 12-year relationship. It was so hard on me. I never felt attractive, that he loved me, and that I wasn't just a roommate. It's hard getting into a relationship after that as well. Story 67. Funnily enough, our sex life improved a lot after we had children. I don't think there was a direct correlation. It was mostly just that we got together really young. Both had a lot of issues, and it took some time to sort them all out. We're nearing 20 years together. Story 68. Got divorced after a couple years of marriage. Getting intimacy from him was like getting blood from a stone. He reserved his sex drive for online chat rooms and OnlyFans. Story 69. I'm a little heartened to see there are loads of others in the same situation. It's a lonely existence. I try really hard to not resent my wife's physiological issues that prevent a normal sex life. Mostly succeed, but also depressed that they're a thing in the first place. Story 70. I am reading these comments and shocked as to how many women apparently reject physical touch as intimacy. As a youngish woman, I couldn't imagine being with a man who didn't enjoy physicality, hugs, etc. Would def be off-putting and a deal breaker for me. Story 71. Divorced. If I could go back in time, I never would have married him. I have so many regrets on what I missed out on. I never should have settled and told myself sex wasn't as important as emotional connection and feelings. Story 72. Not well. I don't feel love due to our different sexual drives, and he doesn't understand why I'm so upset by our lack of intimacy. Found a divorce mediator option rather than the lawyer route, but he doesn't understand why we need a divorce. Story 73. Divorced. She started dating another man while still with me after her having a low libido and sex issues for the majority of our relationship. I accepted and loved her for who she was. Joke's on me. Story 74. 22 years down the line and not had sex with my husband in over 2 years. And is very much a marriage based on friendship and can't ever see a way back from this point or having that physical desire for him again. Story 75. Married 2 years when I realized he only found true joy in my misery. 5 years before I realized he was withholding sex as a weapon. Took until 7 years before I finally left. Lesson learned. Don't put up with bullcrap. Story 76. Been together since 83. First years weren't great, but in her 30s and early menopause, she changed a lot. At 59, she is far friskier than me, and we are content in life. Story 77. Divorce, then open non-married relationship works great for us. We even have marginally acceptable sex occasionally, just now I don't initiate it. Get up halfway through and just go shower and do other crap the rest of the day. Story 78. I, female, spent the entire 16 years feeling rejected and ugly and unsatisfied. Don't recommend. Happily divorced now, but not dating, as spent so long suppressing my sexuality, I'm slightly terrified to switch it back on and be rejected again. Story 79. I was in this situation with my ex-wife, and it was awful. The frustrations just kept going and started affecting our relationship. My second wife can't keep her hands off me, so yeah, we're happy. Story 80. Definitely see that we're both more irritable and snap more easily, especially with a young baby in the mix. Having that moment to get intimate can make us happier and better people. Story 81. Not doing so well. We have other problems, though. I don't think the sex is the root cause, but the lack of it makes it harder to pull through rough patches. Story 82. Haven't had sex in 6 months. We also have 2 young kids who are constant rotation in our bed. We've also been together for 15 years and don't really care. Story 83. It was a sticking point in our relationship. Marriage lasted 1 year, mainly for other reasons, but it doesn't change. So if you're banking on it changing, it won't.